We turn to the top of page 346 and we gather our tzitzit in preparation for the Shema. And as we prepare to chant the words of Ahava Rabbah about God's boundless love, and therefore our boundless love for one another, I'd like to acknowledge that this fun atmosphere of Super Bowl Shabbat, it comes from an important place. Sports play an important role in our lives. If we didn't realize that 2 years ago, when we all sat in our homes isolated, with nothing to watch on television, suddenly these live events became crucial to our sanity. And baseball and basketball figuring out how to hold these events for our viewing at home was like a crutch that got us through those initial months of isolation. It's a fascinating thing how people root as fanatics for teams and players that'll never know our individual names. The Chicago Cubs will never know how much it meant for me to stand there at Game 7 and watch them win a World Series. And yet, nonetheless, it doesn't diminish the amount of feeling or love that I have for that emblem that they wear on their baseball hats. The Super Bowl is perhaps the single most important event in the American calendar each and every year. It's more important than Thanksgiving, it's more important than elections, because at the beginning of the Super Bowl, the single most important thing happens before the players actually begin playing. And that's that in a stadium where it's going to be divided between people wearing blue and yellow and people wearing orange and black. People who are politically left, people who are politically right. People who are all kinds of different shades of religions and spirituality. People whose opinions run the gamut on all kinds of things. For the briefest of moments, everybody acknowledges the national anthem. And people who go to Super Bowls talk about the gusto, the ruach, with which that anthem is sang in that stadium by 80,000 people. We don't have a lot of other moments like that in our country, where the whole country watches as our greatest artists take a field and perform, and we all stand together and realize for the briefest of moments that no matter what color our shirt is, we're actually all on the same team. It's this week in the Torah that God teaches us that lesson. We were actually redeemed from Egypt, one tribe at a time, if you pay attention, and we walk out in our encampments, and in the desert we're told to fly a flag of our tribe. But it's this week that we learn that when people see the Kohen Gadol, when people see our most important position of our people, he should be wearing a breastplate. And on that breastplate is actually a stone representing each of the 12 tribes for the first time bound together in one piece. And that breastplate messages out that God doesn't love one tribe more than the other. God doesn't love Levi because of the Kohanim and the Levites. God doesn't love Judah because ultimately the monarchy will come through Judah. God doesn't love Shimon the best because Shimon gets a lot. God loves the League of Tribes, the peoplehood, the nationhood, all of us. For the first time in Parshat Tetsaveh, we realize that we're on the same team. And there's incredible power and strength in us realizing that. And since Parshat Tetsaveh to today, when Jews see other Jews, we act that way. When you meet another Jew from another city, the assumption is that he's going to know your friend Shlomo, who lives in Houston, Texas, or Manhattan, because after all, how many Jews live in those cities? But the assumption is that because we're on the same team, because we all play together, that we should all be together, we should all root for one another. And so I don't know if the NFL understood that putting the Super Bowl on Parsha Tetsaveh was so beshert. I think somehow deep down, whichever rabbi Roger Goodell studies with probably told him. But there's great meaning. There's great meaning for us this week in acknowledging the power of team, the idea that we can associate with one another and root for one another even though we don't agree on every single detail with one another. And we can even stand with people who are not on our team for the briefest moment and offer appreciation for the most important values in the world and acknowledge that we share a lot in common with people on our team around the world, whether you're thinking of the Jewish people or whether you're thinking of Rams Nation or people who are not on our team. This is a special weekend for us all. Ahava Rabbah begins in the top of page 346.
Why are there so few songs about football? Does God have a favorite team?
I'm so excited to begin this tradition of Super Bowl Shabbat. I want to begin this morning by thanking the Alvin and Violet Harris Memorial Fund, which provides us with the opportunity to create community programming like this for all of us to come together to experience community in a meaningful and fun manner. And most of all, this morning, I would like to thank our guest, Howard Slavin. Before I do, we're going to need a helper, and so I was going to nominate Elijah or Zev, but I'll nominate Lathan now. Howard brought a prop to be passed around the sanctuary. It's a NFL football. Not many people have actually touched a real NFL football, and he wanted everybody to understand, how much bigger it is than you think it is. And I was excited touching it, and I'm an adult. So I figure that everybody else will be pretty excited to touch a football. Andrew's nodding his head, yes, everybody excited to touch a football. But I feel like the dad in the room suddenly, let's not throw the ball inside the room. Everybody understand? If you feel the need to throw the ball, you can go outside and throw the ball, but not inside the sanctuary. Okay. That's right. With a love and passion for football, our speaker today, Howard Slavin, grew up in the San Fernando Valley, where he played flag and varsity football at Birmingham High School. I did not expect that. This is really a rowdy crowd. We're a lot of team spirit already. As a freshman at USC, there you go, thank you. That's the spirit I was looking for. Slavin had the chutzpah to take part in freshman football tryouts. He quickly found he was neither big enough nor good enough to play at that level. He continued his college, then law school education. After passing the bar exam, he went on to coach 8 to 12-year-olds in Pop Warner football. At a Pop Warner game, Howard asked one of the officials how one becomes a referee. Slavin joined the Southern California Football Association in the mid-1970s. And soon moved to junior varsity and high school football. In 1982, Howard was hired by the Pac-10 Conference, where he worked major college football for 5 years as a referee. His college work attracted attention from the NFL. He officiated in the NFL for 29 years, first as a side judge, then as a replay official, and he wears a very cool NFL kippah. I don't know if anybody else noticed. He worked several postseason games and was selected to officiate Super Bowl 36 in 2002. His NFL career ended in 2016 when he retired. Howard was the second Jewish referee in NFL history. He'll share some of his experiences today On behalf of Adat Shalom, it's our honor and pleasure to welcome you to Super Bowl Shabbat. Howard Slavin.
Can we put that in the front?
Sure.
Wait, want me here?
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
To try to throw it, but I'm not going to. So I'm not looking at that either.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom.
Well, I'll explain. I'll explain that first. Howard's going to talk for 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll open it up to some questions. We'll do questions. I'll join him up here on the bima. And so if anybody has anything to ask, hold questions till the end. Sometimes they just jump in, but
Okay.
not today. Not today.
Well, I came to California when I was 5 years old after a divorce between my parents in Cleveland, Ohio. And I grew up thereafter in the San Fernando Valley. And my mother remarried a very, very strict Orthodox Jew. And as I grew older and older and began to love things to do that occurred on Shabbat, it became very, very apparent that that was not going to be allowed in the house. And my stepdad made it very clear that I was not to do anything from Shabbos from sundown Friday until Shabbos was over on Saturday. I was so troubled by this, and I tried to explain to my mother that I meant no harm. I ran away from home when I was 15. And I lived in a motel. I did some work to keep the pool clean and do the gardening, and had a room, and graduated from high school in Birmingham at 15 and a half, and then went on to USC at that point. As you heard from the rabbi, I actually tried to walk on at freshman football tryouts, but it became apparent I was neither big enough nor good enough. But I remained friendly with the people on that team, and that team actually went to the Rose Bowl in 1963, where USC beat Wisconsin at the Rose Bowl. I loved the game. It became apparent that I was no longer going to be able to play it. And I got a call one day from one of my former teammates who said he was coaching little kids, Pop Warner kids, 8 to 12-year-olds. He said, the dad that helps me has had surgery, and I need somebody that knows the game that can help me coach. How about doing it? 2 afternoons, late afternoons a week, and 1 weekend day. So I tried it. I loved it. I spoke to the officials one day. How do you become a referee? They told me, and that started it. The following year, I joined the Southern California Football Officials Association, and little by little, I began to realize just how much I loved it. And I began to move up slowly but surely from Pop Warner to junior All-American football, the kids 12 to 16, then lower division high school, the Bs, the varsity, junior varsities, ultimately to junior college, small university, and ultimately to the Pac-10 conference, the conference of which UCLA and USC are members, now called the Pac-12. I remember specifically in a Pac-12 or Pac-10 game right around early September 1963, and you all might have even been at this game at the Coliseum. Florida came out and played USC, and I was one of the officials on the field. And in that game, SC was losing throughout the ball game, and at the end, near the end of the game, they were behind by 6 points, 19 to 13. They had the ball, they started moving the ball upfield, and with just 5 seconds to go on the game clock, with people running on and off the field, SC tried a desperate pass, which was incomplete, but I caught Florida with 12 men on the field. And for that, it cost them a 15-yard penalty, as well as extending the game for an untimed down, with SC having the opportunity to snap or pursue a play again. And in that pursuit, SC's quarterback threw a touchdown pass to tie the game. Not only was the game tied, but then SC missed the extra point and the game ended in a tie. It was nice to be able to have that happen. The following Monday, a famous LA Times columnist, Jim Murray, wrote a column. Something unique happened at the Coliseum on Saturday. USC actually had an alumnus, and by golly, he was able to count up to 12. And thereafter, I pursued my officiating career in the Pac-10. In order to get in that league, you must have officiated extensively in the high school and junior college and small college level, and I had some marvelous experiences. The following year, after that SC Florida game, I had some business that took me back to the South, and I had to go back to California through the Atlanta airport, and as I'm walking down one of the concourses in Delta Airlines terminal, I see a man that looks familiar to me, and we're looking at each other, and finally he stops and he says, "I know you. You're that son of a bitch that counts so California." And it was Charlie Pell, the Florida coach, whose team lost because of that call. In order to get in the NFL, the general requirement is that you must have officiated for at least 10 years, 5 of which had to be at a major college level. Few people ever get into the NFL with that meager amount of experience, but for me, I made a big call at a Stanford game that cost Stanford the game at Stanford Stadium. When I came out of the dressing room with my colleagues, because we leave after the ball game, it becomes Miller time for us, and somebody from the NFL was there scouting, because the NFL hires several people, mostly retired football officials, to watch people who officiate that can be recommended, or people that have already applied so that they can be evaluated. I was stopped. I was told that they'd seen my performance that day, asked me if I'd ever filed an application with the NFL. I said, "No, I haven't." He says, "I'd like to see to it that you get one." And by golly, the next week, an application arrived, and that started my NFL activity. 2 years later, after getting to officiate the UCLA-Iowa game, the Rose Bowl game, in March of that year, 1987, I got a call from the NFL. "Congratulations, Howard. We're bringing you into the league. And we know you're going to have a wonderful career, and congratulations, it's terrific." And that started my NFL career. Was on the field for 12 years as a side judge, downfield on the sideline, about 20 yards from where the typical play begins, and was responsible for starting to count the defense. If you watch the Super Bowl tomorrow and you'll see any of the downfield officials, before the play begins, you'll see them holding their finger up and their arm extended. What they're doing is signifying to the other officials that are deep that they've counted the defense and that there's only 11 men, because a team may only play with 11 men, sometimes less, but no more than 11 men. When you're in the NFL, you work 20 games a year. The NFL has 16 regular season games, 4 preseason games. Every crew is off for 1 game in the first 10 weeks, 1 in the second 10 weeks. So you work a total of 18 games. You get your assignments about 3 weeks early, unless there's a holiday or foreign game. And you might need to get a passport or make sure that there's adequate travel available. The NFL flies its on-field officials first class. It's a nice perk. People ask, "How much do you earn?" Well, I wish I'd been a part of this year's collective bargaining agreement, because the average NFL official of the 119 that work that league now, they'll make about $200,000 a year. The Super Bowl guys will get $50,000. Not bad work for a Sunday afternoon. During this season, basically our season begins with communications from the league in May, and it ends with the Super Bowl. Every week we have something going on. We get something in the mail, either hard mail or email, and essentially it's an extraordinary experience. I wish I could share with you some of the things that happened during that week. We have to be in the game city the day before the game by 2 o'clock. So for the entire season, starting in mid-July when we go to a 3-day clinic until the Super Bowl time, I was at LA International Airport usually by 5:30 in the morning, catching a plane to go somewhere in the Midwest or East, and then sometimes wishing I had a game on the West Coast because it would allow me to sleep in a little bit. The league uses American Express preferred travel services and basically stays. We know the hotel at which we'll stay. We have to contact and make reservations by Wednesday at noon of the week that we receive our assignments, and very, very important to make sure that we can get out. And when I say get out, sometimes it's very, very difficult to get out if we're in the east and there's inclement weather. During the league season, I think you have a general idea that the officials are pretty much reviled. I had a shirt that I used to wear under my striped shirt. It was a T-shirt that said, basically the philosophy that you have to have if you're a sports official, said, "I love it when they boo." My first game in the league as a brand new official involved the two teams that were predicted to be number one that year when the season ended. It was a game in Denver between Seattle and Denver. And the Denver quarterback was a young man whose high school games I had officiated when he played at Granada Hills High. It was a young man by the name of John Elway. And just before the kickoff, I was on the sideline, Denver's sideline, waiting for the end of the Star-Spangled Banner, and then my heart was in my throat, and all of a sudden somebody came up and hit me in the back of the head with a forearm. It was John Elway. I'll not use the language that he did, but it basically was, "Don't screw up." The coaches have interesting things to say. When I was in college, I also got assigned to an out-of-town game. USC played Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. My responsibilities before game time, 2.5 hours before, was to go to the home team's dressing room, speak to the coach, tell him what the official game time was, which we got from the TV people, and what time they'd have to leave their dressing room for introductions. So I walked into the Illinois dressing room, and I saw the Illinois coach. His name was Mike White. And Mike White looked up to me. I held my hand out to shake his hand. He wouldn't shake my hand. So I just went to be very businesslike. I said, "Coach, would you tell me, please, the number of your captains, and if you have any unusual plays that I can share with the crew?" And he says, "I can't believe they sent you back here." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I understand you went to USC, even played there." I said, "Well, Coach, I did go to USC, but I didn't really play there. I watched there." And he looked at me and he says, "Well, I still can't believe that they sent somebody like you to such an important game involving your alma mater, where you know if you make the call against us, you're going to be applauded when you get back to Los Angeles." I said, "Coach, that's not the way it works. When I wear this shirt, my biases end. If I see offense or defense do something wrong, you'll see my flag go." Well, the game went along. generally okay. Right before the end of the ball game, with SC leading Illinois, Illinois threw a pass that was completed right in front of Coach White. And when that pass was completed, the receiver was shortly tackled and lost possession of the ball, fumbled. And I'm standing watching it because it's right between me and Coach White. There's a big scramble, but clearly it was easy to see that USC had recovered the ball. And at that time, when there's a change of possession on the field, one of the things that we do is we stop the clock. And when you see the officials stopping the clock, you'll see them wave their hands above their head like that. Well, I looked at Coach White. He realized, obviously, that Illinois had lost the ball. And I just looked at him and I did this. Our ball. He looked at me and just shook his head. Well, he had kind of an interesting thing to say the next year. My opening game in the Pac-10 was Illinois at Stanford. Stanford got the first kickoff and ran a play involving a running back running towards the sideline and then cutting upfield. They call it a student body left or a sweep play. And I was over on that side of the field when the Stanford running back fumbled the ball, and it's rolling and rolling and rolling near to the sideline. And just before it goes out of bounds, an Illinois linebacker very clearly recovered the ball. And when there's a change of possession, that's another clock-stopping episode, and I'm signaling timeout. And not unbeknownst to me, but I am the only one that knows what happened on the field. And I'm going to change of possession. And 5 guys came on top of me. And I had 4 broken ribs and a cartilaginous separation. First play of the game. My season, 1986, was not joyous. Anyway, they're getting out, the players are getting off me, and Coach White has come down from his bench, and looking at me, he says, "Whose ball is it? Whose ball is it?" I said, "Coach, I'm going to give it to you if I can get up." He says, "Let me help you." I think my opening game in the NFL was a game up in Seattle. As I had mentioned, I take it back. Now my opening game the following season, my opening game was in Seattle, and Chuck Knox was the Seattle coach, and they were playing Houston. And Houston had a quarterback that played his high school and junior college ball right over here near us, Warren Moon. Went to Hamilton High School and then West Los Angeles College, and then went up to the University of Washington. Anyway, just before, whoever won the game was going to have a likelihood of getting a real good head start on getting to the playoffs. Anyway, just before the end of the game, Seattle was behind, and in a punting situation, they were planning to punt, but then they decided to throw a pass instead, and it was completed for a first down. However, their widest receiver grabbed and held the opponent. And from 25 yards away, I threw my yellow flag and basically reported to the referee in the Kingdome with the most unbelievably loud noise you can imagine that Seattle had committed offensive holding and that they are to be penalized 10 yards from where that foul occurred. And the referee looked at me and he has his lips pursed right next to my ear. It was so loud. He said, "Howard, they're not going to like that." Well, Coach Knox really didn't like it, and he started coming after me. "You blind blank, you blind such and such. I won't share the actual language with you. I'll let you imagine what he said. And we let them vent. You know, this is a big thing for their program. And I realized the situation that existed, but we let them yell and scream. I said, Coach, he grabbed the opponent. You know, I mean, it was a huge hold. And he kept going, you blind so-and-so, you blind mother. We wait 1 second, and...
You asked for the 15-minute warning. You asked for the end of the period. I'm just telling
wait,
you.
real quickly, and I'll finish the story.
Sure.
Chuck Knox is screaming, you blind so-and-so, and I had finally had enough. Well, what the league wants us to do in that situation is give the coach a warning. And the warning goes something like this. Are you talking to me? You want to say that again? And Chuck Knox and the coaches know when we do that, we've reached the end of our fuse. And I said that to him with one of my colleagues on the field nearby who's watching all this. And he says, you talking to me? I said, Coach, you talking to me? And he looked at me and he says, Jesus Christ, Slavin, not only can't you see, you can't hear either.
No, you're not done. You're not done. I want to know, when you wake up in the morning of the Super Bowl, yeah, it looks like you're in a everybody loves you in this picture.
This is at the end of a big brawl, and I thought that I could stop it before it began. I was really wrong, and this is a brawl between two huge rivals at the time, San Diego Chargers and the Oakland Raiders, and I got in the middle, and somebody's elbow accidentally hit me in the back of the head, and I needed 5 stitches. And so I was covered with blood, because scalp wounds tend to bleed very, very liberally. And I was the highlight of the highlight films. And these are some of the folks that I speak to. Actually, they're having a nice conversation about good places to eat in San Diego.
So let me ask you, you wake up in the morning of the Super Bowl, you're going to officiate. How does that morning and that day just play out differently than every other game of your life? Well,
the officials for the Super Bowl arrive in the game city on Thursday, and they've already received copies of, now it's CDs or email views of the teams, but there's a whole lot of preparation, lots of gatherings to go to. The officials are a part of it, but urged not to spend a lot of time. And by the time the Super Bowl day comes along, everything is pretty much planned. The league has private transportation for us. We eat together as a crew, have a devotional service, and get to the stadium about 3.5 hours before game time. And we do everything that we would do for any other game. And we talk about what's going on, if there's any last-minute information that's been acquired since we've looked at those teams, because everybody that worked the Super Bowl must have worked one of the preceding playoff games. And so they've been picked because they've had a great season. Everything an NFL official does is graded. Retired officials are hired by the league to grade officials with good call, marginal call, incorrect call, or no call, meaning a call that should have been made but wasn't. So we do everything as we can to maintain what all the officials do during the season. Your heart's beating a little faster, and we remind ourselves as we're about to go out and officiate the biggest game of the year, hey guys, let's get the big ones, and let's be great dead ball officials, because it's sometimes after the ball becomes dead after a play ends that some extracurricular activity occurs, and we want to see that. We don't necessarily want to penalize it, but we want to get there and try and stop it before it escalates. So it's a time where we're continuing to do the same things that we've been doing since the previous August when we were working preseason games before the regular season began.
Rabbis also get graded. Good sermon, bad sermon, no sermon, but no sermon is the highest level. That gets the best grade usually. So the last question that I have, and then we already have a few hands up, is how did being Jewish, football is the most Christian of all the sports that we have in this country. If people don't realize it, there are prayers recited in every football locker room from high school all the way through the NFL before the game. Everybody, and every Jewish person that I've spoken to associated with the NFL talks about those moments and how their Jewish identity somehow plays a role. How did your Jewish identity in the league as an official play a role in how you officiated?
Well, I think the one time that a potential conflict existed is I was on the same crew with the other Jewish official. His name is Jerry Markbright, a referee from Skokie, Illinois. And we were always concerned what would happen if we got an assignment on a high holiday. And by golly, we did. And we talked to each other, and we decided we'd talk to a rabbi because we were very troubled. We're with a crew that counts on us, and we always think we're irreplaceable. And basically the bottom line was most of us were high holiday Jews, and we ultimately decided that we would work that day and hope that God would understand. We had a game in Buffalo one day, and it was in Hanukkah time. And before the game, two of us, Jerry Markbright and I, visit the home team coach and the visiting team coach. And we go up to the home team coach, Marv Levy, and Jerry says, "You know something, coach? This is a momentous time. It's Hanukkah, and you, me, and Howard are all Jewish." And he looked at us, and he says, "No, Jerry, you forgot the owners." But I think under the circumstances, the aspect of our religion, I know I frequently would get to town early enough if we had a game in Chicago where Jerry lived and tried to go out to Skokie and go to temple where he worshiped. And we were always identified, and it was always flattering. I think basically the situation of being Jewish, I think if anything, it helped us in our focus in knowing that it's important to be prepared. And that's exactly what it is about an NFL official or any major official, and that is to be prepared and be aware of what's happening and act quickly on it.
Great. I'm going to start the first two questions. First, my dad, and then Joe Hoffman.
Okay?
Now that you're retired, if you want to go to the Super Bowl game, do you have to buy a ticket, or you give me one?
Yeah, the question about availability of tickets. The retired officials get garnished. So this year, I was contemplating going to the Super Bowl with relatives, and the on-field officials that are not working the game, they have the privilege of buying 4 tickets. Well, I have a lot of friends that are still in the league, and I called one of them and I said, "Hey, Tony, are you going to use your Super Bowl tickets?" He says, "No." I said, "Will you do me a favor, let me buy them?" He called me 3 weeks ago and he says, "Well, are you sitting down?" I said, "Well, yeah." He says, "I got the notice about Super Bowl tickets. These are tickets up around the nosebleed area, Mount Wilson, I think they call it. And they're $2,900 a piece, $12,000. I mean, it just blew me away. So because of the COVID problems and such, we decided not to go to the Super Bowl, so somebody has taken on the task of buying those tickets, and hopefully they'll use it.
Joe.
When you started refereeing, instant replay wasn't a big deal. Now, everything is under a microscope. So how, as an official officiating the game, affects the way you officiated when that came into play? Because every little detail of every play, if it's
Sure. The question was, for those of you that are in back, how has instant replay affected the way on-field officials officiate? Well, the general rule is that we make the call, and the vast number of our calls are correct. Basically, the NFL has statistics that show that about 98.8% of the calls that are made by officials are correct. And I once heard a commentator say, "Don't you wish you had a business that was that efficient?" But there's going to be a few. We have to make split-second decisions of human bodies moving at great speeds, and occasionally one is going to be missed. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes there are big misses that affect the game. And so instant replay, I don't think, has caused officials to change their mode. You watch the play, make the decision, and then blow your whistle. And for the most part, you may ask even for some help from somebody on the field that had a different angle than you did, if there's some question. But instant replay has been a real boon. It basically started in 1999, and the then supervisor of officials was a man by the name of Art McNally, and it was just announced yesterday that he was being brought into the Hall of Fame. So as a remarkable individual who was himself an official, he's now coming into the Hall of Fame. And instant replay has become so remarkable. The technical materials that are available, the number of views that we had, it's almost just impossible to miss a play if it's a reviewable one. Happens every now and then, but I believe that no official has really altered their method of making officiating calls just because there's somebody looking over their shoulder. It's either at the game or when we get finished with the game, we're handed a CD that has the entire game, the coach's view from the sideline and the end zone view. So on your way home, you put this in your Microsoft Surface and you go and look through the games so that you can see, uh-oh, I screwed up, or boy, that was a hell of a call. And you'll get your grades the following Tuesday, and you have the opportunity to contest their grading. And I think the bottom line is it's really here to stay. It's been a very, very good tool. And it's unfortunate that not all calls can be changed, but most of them can. Nice to talk to you.
I think we're going to put a pin in it for a little bit. I just wanted to say before we go to Kiddush and everybody has an opportunity soon after Musaf to ask you questions and crowd you and everything, the people should ask you about the large oversized ring that you're wearing this morning that I know you brought with you for a reason. And also I wanted to say in front of all these people that I wanted to acknowledge you as a mensch. You are the first guest we've had that has donated back the speaking honorarium back to the synagogue. And I want to acknowledge that in front of everybody. I know it's embarrassing to you, but
You're very kind.
you've been a mensch every way, every step of the way with us. Thank you very much, Howard.
You're welcome. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Mr. Slavin, I want to know if I can use the thing where the rabbi comes up to you and you say, wait just a sec. I want to know if that's transferable to other, and thank you.
"24 of these delivered to the dressing room of the officials 3 hours before game time so that they can be prepared in the officials' dressing room, not untouched by the players or the teams."
Wow. And now Dale's back. Okay, very good. Very good. Please rise as we continue the service with the Musaf.
Wait just a second. No, I just wanted to try it out. All right, no.